Howdy. I'm Great Pilgrim. Oh, boy. This is called a church warden. Anything with this kind of long stem on it. It's got a briar pipe, burl on it. The burl from a briar plant is what these are made out of. And they're just one of the best you can get. Another one you can get, by the way, is meerschaum, which is made out of a soft stone that it starts white like this, but over time it'll turn yellow. And if you're a poor man, which I am, you go with this. This is called a Missouri meerschaum, otherwise known as a corncob pipe. Anyway, if you're interested, I took up my pipe smoking about 2 months back. I used to smoke cigarettes, but I quit about 25 years ago. But I figured I'm 70 something, and it hasn't killed me yet, and it's a very pleasurable thing to do. So I took back up pipe smoking. I don't smoke cigarettes anymore, but I do smoke pipe and a cigar every now and then. Anyway, today is in early September in Oregon, and it's raining outside. The rains have come. They should end on us in about May. That's the way it is around here. It gets either very bright and beautiful or very, very rainy. And it's the beginning of the rainy season. Anyway, I wanted to talk about a gun. But before I talked about that gun, I wanted to talk about it's sort of an earlier gun, but it's a later gun. It's weird. Okay. It'll make more sense as I go along. Anyway, let's start with the weird gun that I'm not really talking about first. Oh, let's do that. I think that's about the right angle to see it. This is a 1907 Rothsteyr. And the Rothsteyr was developed by, it was financed by the financier George Roth, who was, he made a fortune in ammunition manufacturing. But he really wasn't into guns. He wasn't a designer or anything. He was just a money man. And usually that's the way it is. You got a money man, and then you've got a designer, and then you find a place to make it. Well, the Steyr Works made this, and the designer was a fellow by the name of Karl Krenkoff, who's a Czech, who was also a genius. He was the Browning, or the Peterson, or the Garand of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And this became the pistol of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, of their cavalry. It's in a proprietary 8mm cartridge, never used before or since. And it has about the power of a .32 auto, and it's way over-engineered for the power of the cartridge it has. It also has this interesting trigger. Let me show you something about the trigger. Let me come back up a little bit. Okay. You see how it sticks out here? Once cocked, you pull the trigger and watch that little pin. See how it goes back slightly? That's the set. The trigger is a double-stage trigger. There is no other safety on this gun. And the way it works is it only engages the trigger when it reaches the final pull, which is a brutal long pull. And it's a cavalry pistol, so it has to be. See that? Now when I release the trigger, because it did not fire, it just stays back. But if you do the trigger again, it clicks. That's the first stage. No other trigger is made like this at that time period, but Glock uses one very similar today. Anyway, reason I want to talk about this is before this gun, the developer of this, named Karl Krenkoff, had developed a version of this, an earlier version, that was more designed for the civilian market. It was in a 7.65 short cartridge, sort of like .32 auto, only think of it as .32 auto Kurz. That round was developed originally in Hungary for the Frommer Stop. I remember Hungary was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And they also controlled the Balkans, which is why, and the other Slavic countries, including Czechoslovakia. So, of course, Karl Krenkoff came into the sphere of the Austro-Hungarians. And, you know, being a weapons designer, he gravitated to most of Austria. Now, like I said, this was made by the Steyr Works. But long before this gun, see, I told you I was going to get to that, he made another gun that was called the Roth Sauer. Again, George Roth was the financier, but this time the maker was J.P. Sauer and Son of Schul, Germany. Now, where is Schul? It's a little place called Thuringia. Thuringia is sort of central to Germany. It's a small principality, and Schul is a very, very small town. I think right now it has a population of around 70,000, so it's not exactly a big place. It got its start around, well, the 1300s as a mining place. It was really big into iron mining and brass, or copper for making brass. And Schul was a small town, but very industrial. So they started making weapons there. First, they started making swords and knives, and then later on, in the late 18th century, they got a contract with the German army to produce, what was it? There was some early rifles that they were working on. And they became really well known for their high-end rifles. Well, the reason I mention this is that the Roth Sauer, which you can't get anymore, the last one I saw was at Rock Island Auction for about $3 grand. But they're beautiful. If you watch Forgotten Weapons, Ian McCallum does a discussion on the Roth Sauer he had. This is from a 2014 video, but it's well done and it discusses them. Well, when that contract ended, this was around 1900, and they started on the Steyr Works started on the Roth Steyr here. Well, Sauer stopped making that one, and they thought, well, we need to make one of our very own. So they went to another designer and had another one made. And this is the Sauer model of 1913. Now, the 1913 is an interesting pistol for several reasons. This is a 32 ACP, or 7.65 Browning, as it was called in Europe. Very small, compact gun. It barely fits in my big fat hands. And it's a beautiful little piece of engineering that uses, among other things, let me show you this. Okay. The slide on it is a single piece of milled tubing. This was based, well, at least in spirit, on this. The 1907 Savage also uses a milled tubular slide. But there's nothing in the lockwork inside here that looks anything like the lockwork in this one. But in spirit, it mimics that. It has this end piece here that holds it in place. The catch that holds this end piece is a rear sight. And I really don't want to take it apart because it's a bear to get back together again. This is a third variant. Just by looking at the position of the safety on it, this notch that's cut out, the lack of a little bump here, which was first variant, and a few other things. When I got this, it did not have a magazine. Newmarch Arms had one left. I bought it. This thing it's a beautiful little pistol. Now, with my big fat hands, the problem is when I fire it, this part of my hand gets caught right there. And I end up with a nice little scar right there from shooting the damn thing. I've tried and tried. I have to keep it. I can't get it way up here, or a piece of my hand hangs out and catches on this slide when it comes forward. So I have to carefully hold it like this, which is a little uncomfortable to shoot the darn thing. But I love the pistol. It's a light, small, extremely compact 32 auto. Single action. Oh, and it has an interesting feature. When you pull back the slide, it does not stay back. You notice that. But the way you can do that is there's a little ring thing up here in the trigger guard. And if you put your finger in here and push up as you pull back, it catches this and keeps the slide open. It's considered horrible in terms of safety today, but it was considered the height of safety and security back then. Anyway, this is called the J.P. Sauer and Son model of 1913, third variation. And the way you can tell that this was made in Austria and made for the Austrian market is the marking on top of here, which says J.P. Sauer und Son, S-O-N-E, und Schul. The ones for American export say Sauer and Sons, Germany. This does not say Germany on it. So that means that this is one for domestic consumption. You know, maybe a police detective or I don't know. Later on, these were pushed in as substitute standards in World War I. So officers did carry these. But I just think this is a fascinating pistol. After Karl Krenke had moved on to greater things, Sauer had to do something. You may have heard of Sauer from Sig Sauer. Well, that's when Sauer and Schul decided to merge with the Swiss industries, with SIG, which stands for Schwäbische Industriegesellschaft, which means Swiss Industries Manufacturing, and formed Sig Sauer that makes the P210 and other such lovely pistols. Well, I think they have SIG USA now, which makes these things. This one was imported much earlier than, there's no import marks on this thing. So there's no import stuff. I mean, this was imported much earlier than, was it 68 when they started stamping ugly things all over pistols? But anyway, it's just one of the unique ones I've got in my collection. I enjoy the gadget factor of strange older weapons. They're just fun to play with, fun to collect, and fun to find out the history of. If you're interested in the history of this or any other bizarre weapon like this, there is a there's a web page called theunblinkingeye.com, theunblinkingeye.com. And among other things, they have things on cameras and guns and all kinds of stuff. But it's well researched, it's in depth, and it discusses it. Look up 1913 Sauer, and one of the first hits you'll find is one of the Unblinking Eye pages, and read through it. You'll find out some very fascinating information. They've also got a good write-up on the Ortgies, on the Roth Sauer, for instance. They've got all kinds of wonderful pieces on there. I don't know where he got his information, because it takes people like him or Ian McCollum, who travels everywhere to go to strange collections, to actually bring these things to you guys. I found this at a gun show. I got it cheap because it didn't have a magazine and the guy didn't know what it was. I knew it was, and I knew where I could find a magazine. So I bought a magazine, and here it is. Anyway, happy trails.